Having recently completed their development in Verde Beach, Governor Sheila Johnson instructs her company, Johnson Aggregates, to aggressively pursue development within Clearwater County to resolve the county's housing shortage. The company identifies a 101-acre site currently for sale at the Ashland Family Farms as the perfect site for development. The property is listed for an absolute steal at only $200,000, which is cheap enough that the company pulls the trigger before having the opportunity to perform proper due diligence, out of the fear that the property would be scooped up from underneath them. The company intends to have the property annexed into the city of Ashland and built as an urban neighborhood. However, the city rejects the idea due to utility issues. Expensive enhancements to the sanitary sewer system would be required to bring the neighborhood online, and the developer wouldn't be on the hook for those expenses, the city would be. As a result, the land will remain unincorporated within Clearwater County and subject to the county's zoning standards. All lots will have their own wells and septic systems and will be required to be larger than those found in Ashland to preserve the rural character of the unincorporated portions of the county. The county also does not require sidewalks, but is encouraging the creation of multi-use paths along busy roads with green space buffers. Further, the county is requiring a stormwater pond be built here because there will be no storm sewers serving the development. The character of this neighborhood will likely be significantly different than Ashland and prevent further urbanization in this direction. If you like rural subdivisions, hit the like button. And if you prefer living in an urban environment, hit the like button for that too and let me know which one you prefer in the comments. Or just drop an emoji that represents your choice. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building Clearwater County, and we've got a good one today. We're going to do something we haven't done before, and that is build a rural subdivision. These are the kinds of subdivisions that you see on the periphery of the periphery or surrounding a smaller town, and it's going to be exciting to build this because it's going to look totally different than what we've done in Ashland. It's going to be a really neat transition between our urbanized area and our farmland. It's kind of the transition that I feel like we've been missing. So we are going to develop that roughly in this area here. And we're also going to improve some of our farm fields that maybe haven't been looking so good over time. We're also going to save a couple of things through here, like some of these homes that are already here, maybe a couple of barns, and this development right here. But I want to talk about one thing first. I had some significant problems with the build loading in, and I had to make some modifications as a result. The biggest one being building themes. Building themes has not been updated for the most recent updates to the game, and as a result, it was throwing me an error that said array index or object error, no details. And the result of that was I couldn't place anything. I was really worried that it was going to take out Clearwater County. Thankfully, we have the District Styles Plus mod, which has the exact same interface as building themes and even allows you to import your building themes into the mod. So we didn't lose any of the themes, but we did lose the attachment of the theme to our districts. So I had to go through and change the styles for each and every district within the city, and there are a lot of them. So I made a few mistakes. A couple mistakes were made, and the result of that is that we lost about 4,000 in population. All of that said, we have strong demand, and it is rebounding over time. There was a couple of issues. Vanilla buildings is one of the things they were springing up, so I had to make a couple of modifications. Anyway, let's get back to the build, and what I want to do first is eliminate all of the farm fields that we are going to be eliminating. I'm using Move It because it's going to allow me to do this in a much more efficient way. If I were using the normal delete tool, I'd have to go through and hit delete a bunch of times. Now I can just do it once. And then we just hit bulldozer it within Move It, and we're looking good already. And then I want to eliminate the roads through here, which might sound strange, but here's the thing. I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect the roadway network in a new area that's being platted to completely change. Vacating right-of-way when you're doing it all at once for the sake of a plat, that's okay. Vacating right-of-way to accommodate a developer and the city's giving away the land, that's a different story than the developer reconfiguring it themselves. That's very different. So we're going to get rid of most of the roads through here unless they're serving existing development. Like this road right here, we cannot get rid of because these folks are going to want to maintain access to their property. There's also a bike network through here, and that bike network is going to fundamentally change. So we are going to eliminate that as well. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about is how transportation will operate within this area, because it's going to be a little bit different. Right now, the road's cut straight through the neighborhood, funneling traffic directly through it. And the idea now is going to be to basically limit that access as much as possible, to direct cars outside of the neighborhood rather than driving through it. So that is going to be something that with this plat that we are going to try to facilitate. But before we start drawing our roads, I want to fix these farms, and we've got some problems. So first of all, right here, what you see is we've got some wheat cut next to rape seeds. So if you're not sure what rape seeds are, basically, if you've ever used canola oil, that's where it comes from. That said, it probably should be on its own. So we are going to convert this over to our wheat. This is wheat cut. That looks a ton better. Here we have a potato farm next to cotton. When we can't grow cotton up here, but I think just for the diversity of the fields, we may just leave it. So I will convert this to cotton as well. And then I noticed one more spot over here where we're missing a field and it's oriented incorrectly. So this is a corn medium. And I'm wondering if it's right now it's oriented towards this road. If I convert it to orient over there, it looks a lot better, a lot more convincing. And then I will just clone this over here as well. And it cloned in as a greenhouse. And you know what? I kind of like it. I think we're going to leave that. That's pretty good. Now for our roadway layout. And I want to talk a little bit about this because I'm going to turn on our contour view and you won't be able to tell because it's totally flat as a pancake here. So you might just think, well, why didn't you just run the roads up and down here? Well, when you look at rural subdivisions like this and you look at farmland, one of the things you'll notice is sometimes it'll look like there's shadowing in the farmland. And what that is wet places within the farm. Back in the day, wetlands were farmed. And as a result, when you go to convert farmland to a new development for homes, you'll find out that the soils aren't suitable. So as a result, we're going to take an area right around here and build a pond. And this will take all of that wetness in this area and keep it in one location. That'll serve two functions. One, it'll be a recreational opportunity for everyone in this neighborhood. And two, it will ensure that the basements don't flood here. That's something you have to consider. Where does the water go? And that's how we're going to accommodate it here. So I'm going to use, like I mentioned, our rural roads through here. And we are going to maintain all of the development that's already here. Although I do notice we don't have power right here. So we are going to connect that up with a temporary power line. And we are connected up there. So we should be good to go. All right. So I'm going to stay way up here and draw this in. And my main goal is going to basically be to ensure that as little land as possible would be developed along these outer roads. So cul-de-sacking, so the homes are on cul-de-sacs, having new roads to put the homes on, and spacing things out. So our roadway network is not going to be nearly as narrow as this. It's going to be very wide. There will be far fewer roads and more houses on those roads. And there will be green space behind it. So let's get to that. So now I'm just going to node controller and I'm going to stretch these out to maybe 200 and see how that looks. That looks pretty bulbous. So we're going to create all of our cul-de-sacs in this way. So node controller, add a node right here so we can create that bulb. So you can see that we've got two nodes very close, and then take that final node and expand it to 250. Now that number is not a hard and fast. It'll change depending on the type of road that you're using and really how much bulb you want. So, you know, the amount of bulb is a personal decision. And I fully support your right to get the amount of bulb you think is necessary. All right, so we've got all of our cul-de-sacs, and for this particular one, you might have noticed it looked a little bit janky as we were further away. If you wanted to make it look better, you'd adjust the network in ultimate level of detail. It's not overly bothersome to me, so I'm not going to worry about it. And then I had these little loops here. Alternatively, if you didn't want to do a loop like this, you could have an eyebrow or make these smaller to look more like eyebrows, those being those little extensions out where you have multiple houses. Generally, you could fit more homes if you have this little loop like this than you could if you just put them along this road, and that's why we've added that there. Right here is where we're going to add our pond, and this will hold all of our water. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to hop into our landscaping and just drop this down a little bit. We don't want to go that much. We'll drop our brush strength way down, and then just right mouse click to drop this down a little bit. Perfect. And then we'll just grab this and spread it out. Now, I do want to leave a bit of space on the outside for a path. So this isn't going to be the final version of this until we have that nice path. And we are going to generously landscape along the sides of this. We want this to feel like a natural area, even if it's not. And now I'm tightening up this brush and increasing the strength so I can grab the outside and pull it in so we have enough room for those trails, because we're not going to use our self-leveling paths. There we go. And now we'll add our water feature. This is always the most nerve-wracking part. Keep it at 0.01. So it's real small. I'm going to turn on our contours so we can see, and then drop it way down. We're rolling the dice, doing this while the game is moving. And there we go. And I'm going to let this sit for a minute to let the water levels normalize. So now we're going to go through and grab our multi-use path. And we're going to run this on the outside of this area. So along some of these busier roads, I think it would make a ton of sense to have these multi-use paths. It's also a way to delineate between this new neighborhood and the urban area. So we're going to go along the outside. We're going to connect up to some of our cul-de-sac bulbs. All right, so I think we've got most of these in place now, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that I've done here. So I've gone through and I've added all of these connections at these roads here. Now I had to go through and use Node Controller and actually add in nodes where these cross so that we have crossings so that the bikes could progress through. And then I added these paths here so that people who live back here would have the opportunity to take advantage of the water, because this would be a significant amenity. I could see if I lived right here wanting to walk around the pond every single day with my dog. So that is absolutely something that we have accommodated in this area. And we've thought about the people that live here as well at the ends of the cul-de-sacs in terms of biking. We want to give them the opportunity to bike into town if that is something that they choose to do. So that will make it a bit more limiting in terms of the amount of development that we can have here. But I think that if this were something that the county would demand in order to develop this densely in the county, that the developer would absolutely consider doing so. So I'm pretty pleased with the way that this turned out. You can see that there is a robust transportation network through here, but you can also see that it is dramatically different than what you see in the urbanized area. Now I want to talk about parks. And clearly the biggest park is this one right here, but it's not the only park. I think that we want to have some gazebos and things of that nature inside in the interior. And we also want to have climbing frames and things of that nature, and try to reserve those specifically for folks in this neighborhood and nowhere else. I'm going to do one more thing. We're going to connect this road through. It's not providing any connectivity, and that's the main goal with all these roads. You can see that there's not a single through road through this neighborhood. You'd have to make rights and lefts, and it would be very confusing and circuitous for anyone that is not a local. And that was the goal. That's the goal. But if you're a cyclist, on the other hand, it's very, very, very direct. And there might be a couple more spaces where I end up adding cul-de-sacs like this one, so we maximize our development potential. You can see right here is another spot where why would we leave this empty? We probably wouldn't. We'd probably develop that. In fact, let's just formalize that now. All right, so for parks, I ideally would not have any formal parks, maybe one in this area. Let's start out with maybe a climbing frame, and we'll just add that right in the center there. And we can add a couple of these throughout the neighborhood. And then the other big thing would be a gazebo or two. So we'll add in a gazebo here and one over here, but we'll make it different. There we go. And that's about the extent of the parks. So now I want to focus on the pond and make sure that none of our trails are actually going into the pond. So I'm going to adjust this with our brush. The main reason for that is I can't move the path any closer to the road without it creating issues. And I'm going to adjust this before I place buildings so I don't flood everything out. Now I'm going to search for some landscaping that I think is going to do the trick. And I want to have some river reeds, but I think what we're going to start with is a base of some lower grass and some taller grass. Okay, so I took a look at a couple of these that I think look a little bit better. And I think we're going to use a lot of this around here. And then on the other side, we're going to, well, we'll have this on both sides, and then we'll pepper in some of these smaller grass clusters. So that'll be our base around here to try to make it look a little bit more natural. And then we'll sprinkle in some flowers and different things like that as well. And I have to have anarchy on for this because we're going in the water, but I think that's how this looks the most natural. Okay, I've spent way more time on this than I thought that I would, and I haven't seen what it looks like on the ground yet, so we're going to take a look. I just mixed in a bunch of stuff, and I wanted it to feel super varied. So everything from flowers to weeds to different levels of grass to some river reeds to some just trees. And to me, it looks really good. You can see it's just really varied, and there's a lot going on. So I implore you, when you're landscaping, which you should, do your best to just mix things in and look at Mr. Mason's stuff. This is all of the, Mr. Mason added all of the best vanilla trees. Of course, Mr. Mason would have all of the very best stuff on the workshop in terms of landscaping as well. So this to me would be something that if I were looking to live in a rural area, this would sell me. This is some good stuff right here. We could also kick this up to the next level with a fence if we wanted to, but I think it's totally unnecessary. It's good as is. Now I want to think about the development in this area. And generally, we're going to go with some newer buildings. I think this is the perfect spot for American Eclectic. So we are going to draw a district on here and give this some sort of name that is kind of cheesy. Maybe Ashland Farms or something of that nature. And I've never seen a field on fire, but the way that it burns is actually... that looks pretty legit. So that's cool. All right, I'm down with that. That's neat. All right, so what we're gonna do, I've added a district across here. We're gonna name this, and again, Ashland Farms, I think is what we're gonna go with. And you always name a neighborhood after what it displaced. So, all right, now we could go ahead and just zone things in and then add it to the cul-de-sac. If we're gonna do that, we need to come through here and set a style, which I'm totally fine doing. Editor Phil here, and that was a fine idea, Phil from the past, but here's the thing, it doesn't work and there's not a way to make it work. It'll end up looking terrible no matter what I try. So to have maximum control here, we're just gonna use Rico because that makes a ton more sense. I should have done that in the first place. Let's do it. So this is the kind of neighborhood where it is incredibly challenging to just zone. So I'm gonna stop myself. So now we're back into Rico. And here's what we're going to have to do. So I've gone through and I've narrowed this down to buildings with the term ECL, like eclectic. The problem is that we have some of these level ones that pop up through here. So we're going to need to narrow this down further. So what we'll do is we'll add an extra filter panel here, and we'll say that the minimum building level is 2, the maximum is 5. We'll see that there's still a couple of 2s in here that are going to be problematic for us. And I'm curious, are all the 2s bad? They are. So we'll go 3 or better because we don't want any of those building sites. Now I can randomize these through here, and this is going to be considerably easier for me. So I have my random button set to question mark. You could have this set to anything. So you'll have to check that on your own. And I think we've got most of the homes placed now. And here's what I want you to really focus in on. The development pattern is significantly more spread out. And I know that plopping buildings isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it's hard to deny that this doesn't look like a more natural development pattern because they have the houses rotated slightly at the ends of cul-de-sac bulbs and in places where you kind of just would expect to see them. So to me, this makes a ton more sense. I'm going to be very judicious with my landscaping through here. We're not going to make this a forest. We're going to add in a couple of trees here and there. And I've got a way to do this that I think is going to be interesting. But first, I want to add in some duplexes over here. So sometimes you'll see this where there are rural developments. And truthfully, maybe this isn't the best example of it because we do have sidewalks along here. But the number of rural projects that I've worked on that are multifamily drives me absolutely bonkers. To me, it makes absolutely no sense to add a multifamily development in a place that lacks access to sidewalks and transit, to add that kind of density where it's inappropriate, but it happens all the time. Drives me crazy. All right, so you might wonder, why does stuff like that get approved? Why would this get approved? And the long and short of it is, it's really hard to deny housing in a housing shortage. And that becomes the big conversation all the time is, you really want to deny housing during a housing shortage? Probably not. So you don't, and it gets built. Woo! Well, this isn't going to work. So we're going to need to redo this. That is a thing of beauty. Got one little spot here that I missed. There we go. Now we're good. So what I want to do for the rest of this, I talked about the green buffer. So we are going to add in some landscaping along the side of here. They're going to take this very literally and they're going to add a landscape buffer right along the side of their neighborhood so that you can't see the urban area. And this isn't going to be the most attractive thing. It's going to be a row of pine trees or bushes. This is what the game wants to do. And then I want to add in a farm fence along here as well, just so that we have that added privacy. No one's walking through their backyard to get to our brand new neighborhood. And we're going to take some liberties here. I've got to move this silo. I'm not sure why this is here. And I'm sure that's how many people would feel. Why is this here again? I'm not sure, but it is. So we will just let it exist. Let it be. Okay, so we have that now, and that's looking fine. I think we don't need to necessarily shield ourselves from the rest of it. We do have this area. We're going to generously landscape along there as well. And I'm wondering if I have any arborvitaes. I think a juniper is just as good. We're going to densely landscape along the apartments so that these people feel like they have their seclusion. And we're going to get this nice and tight. So our spacing will be basically wall. So 1.2, will that do it? Yeah, that's pretty tight right there. And I kind of like this. It does create that separation. I think that it's not necessary through here though, so I'll get rid of these ones. And then the folks here need a park as well. So we're going to provide that maybe somewhere. I think we could have one more apartment through here. And then we will add a park kind of off the side here. And I've added a path back to this, making it very clear that this is for these apartments, the ones that are part of this development, not those. So we have that back there now. The very last thing we need to do to finish this off is to landscape. And I know that we've been landscaping some today, but we need some landscaping at each of the homes. So I want to try something a little bit different. And a lot of times when you see a new build home, for instance, they will have a landscaping package that they come with. And so they'll get a couple of trees that they're able to plant. And that's what we're going to do here as well. And I think we're just going to go, if you type in canopy and you have the package that I have, we have this leafy, full and bushy. They are absolutely wonderful for what they are. Let's see, this is by P. Delmo. And I want to say that all of them are. So I'm actually I'm wondering if we sort by just that asset creator. So I've got a bunch actually, but most of the trees are probably okay. The cluster's probably the one that's not appropriate. Actually, it's not bad. What I'm going to do is create a new tag, and we'll just tag all of these that we want in the package. And then I know that I have a few street trees that also look pretty good. So I'm going to type in street with this narrowed down to trees. And you see that we've got the silver maple and a couple of other things, including our young linden, which obviously needs to be in our pack as well. And now what I'm going to do is filter this by a tag. So that is clicking on the show custom tag, and we will filter this. We have to refresh it first so that our new tag shows up. Rural tree home. I'm going to reset all of this back. And now you can see that these are all of the options that we set up in this package. And what I want to do is give every home at least one tree in its front yard and at least one in its backyard. And then through the middle, we're going to add in probably some denser landscaping using our brush. And the nice thing is now we can mix this up by hitting the question mark, which will give us a bit of variety. And I'm noticing one thing about this. I don't really have very many large trees in here. And by very many, I mean I have none. So we're going to filter by large trees, and I want to see if there's anything I can do to improve that. And now we have considerably more options. So let's try this again. Okay, and we've added a bit of landscaping throughout here, and I just want to zoom in and have a quick look at this, and you can see that it is looking pretty darn good. Now you might wonder why I kind of went back. I was going to densely forest some of these areas. There's one specific reason why I didn't, and the main reason is that this was farmland, so there would be no forest. So as much as I would love for there to be a forest here, unless someone is going to plant a new one, where's that forest coming from? So we're going to leave it as is. And I think that this is the perfect opportunity for us to take inventory of what we've done and have a brief city tour. Hold on there, Slugger. You got to go back and do a little bit more work. Maybe some fences. This neighborhood looks a little bit naked. Let's get that fixed. In an area like this, I would fully expect people want their privacy, and as a result, they're going to add fences. So I'm just going to quickly come through and add a number of fences through here, giving a little bit of separation and privacy to these properties. Okay, so not everyone has fenced off their home, but many of them have. And this concludes our break in the matrix, where we go forward in time to go back in time. And now we're going to go and have a brief city tour and then go backwards in time once again. Right here, this I think tells you everything that you need to know about this new development. Look at how the network kind of breaks down and you can't even really see how we ended up like this. The one thing that I think we could do that might make this feel just a little bit more reasonable, a little bit more realistic, would be to find some of the corners and maybe add in some lights at the end of the corners. We could also get rid of the lights on the bike path. To me, that's not very rural. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's get rid of some of that. Let's turn it back to daytime and modify our lights a bit. So I'll use my picker tool, select the bike trail, and then we go to the lights, and the default is having a street light. We'll just go through and say none, and I need to go through now and upgrade every last one of these. So I'm gonna have anarchy on and turn collision off so I don't inadvertently delete things. And it might actually be helpful. I just moved play it out of the way, but let's turn this on because it's really gonna help us see where we actually need to get rid of some of this. All right, I think that's all of them. And if we take a look now, yeah, there's a significantly darker footprint in this area. And I know that might be disappointing. I guess we missed one right here. Might be disappointing for you, but the reason why we're doing that is a rural area just might not have the budget to actually facilitate lights at all. So having a couple of lights is probably as good as we're gonna get. And we're gonna add those at the corners of intersections. And I actually have fewer options for this than I had hoped. One of them that is probably the best is a utility pole with a street light, but it's just really difficult to actually figure out how to get that one to work. I think that we would have to place custom utility lines. Not super interested in doing that right now. What we're gonna do is come to all of our junctions here and try to light the intersections. Okay, so now with that, you can see there's just a little bit of light in some of these areas, enough to let you know that there is an intersection there, and that's about it. It's a rural area. We do not want it to be lit up like a city street. So I am very pleased with how this has turned out. I think it's been a very fun build. It's one of these that you don't do very often, but then you do it and you're like, wow, I should do this all over the place, because it feels like a realistic build, at least in my opinion. And once again, I just want to compare again the scale. Remember, this is 100 acres or 400,000 meters squared, and it is just not that many homes. That's a rural subdivision. It takes up a lot of space and doesn't provide a ton of homes. All of that said, I hope that you've enjoyed this build as much as I have. If you did, please hit the like button. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so, and I really can't wait to see you in the next one. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care. Bye-bye.